Fade into board members seated at table.
I'd like to call the board meeting to order for January 26, 2025. Can we all rise for the pledge?
Everyone stands for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone returns to their seats.
Thank you. Carol, can we have a roll call, please?
Jim Batson.
Here.
Kara Benjamin. Don Carmichael.
Here.
Kara Drumkey. Here. Lisa Hessel. Here. Middleish Cotwall.
Here.
Sonal Kulkarni.
We will note Sonal is not in her seat yet, but she's entering the building, so she'll be here shortly. As secretary, she'll be able to perform her duties as secretary, so we won't be appointing any secretary pro tem at this time. I'm going to review the agenda. We're going to start with some student recognition. We're going to follow that with, we're going to flip a couple items here. Superintendent search update with Dr. Porto here. Give us an update on that so that we can have him on his way. And then invitation for public comments. We'll have the teacher union report, ESP union report, update from the D128 Foundation, as it is 128 today. Just a little teaser. Students, school board representatives will then give their reports. We'll talk about some FOIA requests. Superintendent report will follow that. And then we'll have a report by a representative who recently performed our Title IX audit. So that should be a valuable piece of information. We have a consent vote agenda following that. And then our action items will be our semi-annual review of closed session minutes, board policies. We have a series of board policies for a second reading and adoption. We have both LHS and VHHS tennis court work to be that was bid to be discussed. Some HVAC work at LHS, Vernon Hills Pool, spectator carpet replacement. Those are all action items. After that, we'll have any board comments and events. IASB report would normally be here. I'm the IASB rep. We really don't have anything there, so we'll pass over that. CEDAW, will we have anything? Okay, nothing from CEDAW. And then we will move into a closed session at the end for both negotiating matters 5 ILCS 120-/2C2 and employment of employees 5 ILCS 120/2C1. And there won't be any action after that closed session. So that will end our meeting. So getting back to the top of the agenda, we have some student recognition, my favorite part of any board meeting. And this is especially a favorite one of mine. So
Ray Albin approaches the podium.
Here we go.
All right. Good evening. Dr. Gilliam and I would both like this evening to do some special recognition for at both Vernon Hills High School and Libertyville High School, our all-state musicians and theater students. And to help us with this honor this evening, I'd like to introduce our department chairs, our fine arts department chairs, Dr. Drew Russell from Vernon Hills and Dustin Helvey from Libertyville to help us with these awards.
Dr. Andrew Russell approaches the podium.
This is an exciting evening, and it's so exciting that many of our students are preparing to leave tomorrow for All-State Music, and they're not even here. But we will recognize it, and they're also, many of them, this is their second, third time being selected for All-State, so they can just get a little tired of it. But in any event, I'll tell you just a little bit about what this is. There's several different steps to this process. The first step is students send in auditions for selection to a district ensemble, and that's really schools around this general area, basically the Lake County area. And a certain number of students are selected to that, and only the very best of those are selected to go down to Peoria and perform in an all-state ensemble, and that happens this week. They leave tomorrow. Many of these students are also and pretty rigorous academic courses. So I'm sure they're buttoning up a bunch of things. The selection for this, it puts you in the top 1% of musicians in the state. And we always have, this is not data driven, I'm sorry, but we always have among the highest number of music students for all state across the district of any district that exists. And it really happens for a number of reasons. I think you see people starting at the elementary school level, setting a bar that's really, really high and a really big, audacious goal for these students to look out and aspire towards. And that continues on in middle school with those teachers. And that continues on in high school. And I think between our two schools, we have I'd put our music teachers up against anybody in the nation. And then, but it's also, these students are willing to show up and put in work with sort of a payoff that doesn't happen for a very, very long time down the road. And their parents are willing to support them financially with lessons, driving around. I mean, it takes this entire community to come together to support what we have here. And so it's an awesome thing. I love this evening when we're able to recognize these students. Many of them are not here. But without further ado, I'll say all the names for the Vernon Hills students. And for those of you that are here, if you could come up, we'll do a picture and then we'll move on to Libertyville. First up is Eli Anderson. Anaya Bindal. Anastasia Boots. Sam Burton. Jeremiah Katane. Christine Cha. Christine Cha is one of the many Chas that have been recognized. Joseph Huang. Francesca Goss-Enning. Ryan Jin. Simon Manson. Saw him earlier. Ethan Park. Ashfa Ramesh. And Jay Yang.
Students receive certificates and takes pictures with school board members for about the next 30 seconds. Dustin Helvey approaches the podium.
In addition to our fine Vernon Hills musicians, we also have some Libertyville musicians to recognize, and they are Dakota Olson, Braden Weaver, Andrew Schindler, Joey Kim, and Ava Thomas.
Students receive certificates and takes pictures with school board members for about the next 30 seconds.
In addition to All-State Music, we also have All-State Theater to recognize tonight. And the Illinois High School Theater Festival is the largest and oldest non-competitive theater festival in the nation. So our students get a chance to attend a two-day festival. This year was held at the University of Illinois, Champaign, and attend workshops as well as high school productions and college auditions. And the highlight of any theater festival is the All-State Theater production, which brings together the best and brightest actors, technicians, and musicians. And this year, the All-State Theater production was The Prom, and we have 4 students to recognize. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here tonight, but I wanted to read their names. Rosie Wagner, Annie Brody, again, Ava Thomas, and Akshay Jalati.
Jim Batson.
Congratulations to all those students. It's really an honor for our district to be so well represented in both these organizations, both the theater festival and the all-state music program. It's very unusual to have this number of students participating in those programs, and I echo the quality of the teachers and the music programs here, as well as at the elementary districts that send their students to us already very well prepared for high school. So I applaud all those folks. So next up, I asked Dr. Porto to come up and give us a superintendent search update.
Joe Porto approaches the podium.
Thanks for inviting me. We started this process in September and the finish line is actually in sight. And so I thought it would be nice to come and show and review what we've done, where we've been, and how we're going to get this thing across that finish line. So we started back on September 23rd when we were approved BWP. And the very next day, we started posting the position and off we went. We had a very important planning meeting with all of you on October 14th. And we talked about all of the parameters, timelines, everything you wanted in the search. Most of October was spent on two activities. One was active recruitment, both publicizing in multiple sources, not only locally in Illinois and around the country as well. But the big activity of October was getting your school community together and conducting some input gathering activities so that we can develop what we call a leadership profile. So we met with every board member. We interviewed each of you, got your input. We talked to any teachers who wanted to come to some focus group meetings, parents, community members. We all offered multiple ways for you to contribute. Anyone who couldn't make focus groups were invited to complete the survey, which we had record respondents to from this school community. So it's really proud for me to be able to report back to you that leadership profile was really a consensus and an activity that brought your school community together. And everyone who took part in that should be feeling like they took an important role in the entire process. The last of the deadline for applicants to apply, that was in December. And we immediately, as BWP, started taking a look at those applications. And of course, we had the leadership profile and the 9 characteristics that profile generated right by our side. Using that, we picked 14 people to bring in. We didn't have a great total response. We had 22 people apply, which is just a tad lower than we normally get. However, the quality of the people who applied was very, very encouraging. We usually bring in 10 to 12 people to do our initial screening. We brought 14 people in at that point, feeling that they had the characteristics of the leadership profile. We interviewed them. We wrote our questions based on the leadership profile traits, and we assessed the candidates based on those same traits. And we reached a consensus that there were 6 candidates that we wanted to bring forward for the school board to meet. We then had a very important meeting with all of you, and we did that on January 13th, if you remember. And that meeting had 2 purposes. We wanted to introduce you to the candidates, not personally, they weren't there, but we took you through their background, their experience, and why we felt they matched your profile. And then the second half was working on interview questions and going through the expectations of round 1 interviews. The 16th and 17th and 18th were the first round board interviews. Thank you for your time and the way you conducted those. I think you met 2 candidates each of the days so that you could give each of them a thorough interview. You reached a consensus, And as we speak, there are now 2 finalists. And the process gets closer. So how do we bring it to the finish line now at this point? Well, tomorrow, there's going to be one more part of the process that the board had agreed to. We're going to have both candidates speak to an advisory committee. The advisory committee consists of candidates who are running for the school board, representatives from the district office, central administration, staff representatives from the Teacher Association and the Support Staff Association, and Carol. And I'm not sure if I'm leaving anybody else out. I think there's 12 people total. Tomorrow, both candidates are coming in to have a private conversation with the advisory group. Confidentiality has been a goal of ours throughout this process. As you know, if you don't guarantee confidentiality, you have a very hard time getting seated superintendents to apply. No problem with assistants and deputies. Everybody knows they're looking for a career advancement, but sitting superintendents take a risk. If you go through a process and then you're not the one chosen and confidentiality is not kept, then you go back to your district and there's problems. I say this kind of lightheartedly, but it's kind of like you cheated on your spouse, and it's really, really difficult. So I praise the board for its concern about confidentiality. We're going to ask the folks who are involved tomorrow to sign a confidentiality agreement. It's a serious thing to sign, and we expect everyone to cooperate and be professionals, and we'd like the confidentiality to continue till the end. What happens after tomorrow? The 12 people who interview the candidates are going to be asked to share their input in writing. They're going to be asked to share the strengths that they see in the 2 candidates. And also, rather than just weaknesses, we think it's more helpful to the board to put it in the form of questions. What questions would you like the board to follow up with these candidates? The board's still working and has plenty of time to create your questions for the final interview. So this should be really helpful input to you as you prepare. And then what is that final step? One candidate will have their final interview on the 30th, and the second candidate will have their interview on the 31st. Those will be round 2 interviews. It'll be an interview with food and dinner, and it's designed to be a little more casual than the formal dinner, yet the board will be able to ask follow-up questions and get to know the candidates on a personal level. Hopefully you reach a consensus after the 31st, make an offer to one of the 2 candidates, and have a contract ready to proceed. One thing you can all be really proud of is that we haven't varied, you haven't varied 1 iota from the original timeline that we laid out for you. And that's really, really fortunate. We were able to get candidates early on and have a very nice process that's concise yet thorough. The last thing I wanted to let you know is just a matter of protocol and transparency. We have had a couple of inquiries come our way this week, BWP, and the inquiries were surrounding what is perceived as maybe the structured format for tomorrow's advisory group interviews. And these inquiries were centered around basically 2 concerns. The first one, why are there structured questions? Why can't we bring our own questions in? And the second was, why can't there be more people? Why did we only get X number of people and we would like more? The questions, those concerns are, we respect those. We understand where they come from, but I'd like the board to know how they were responded to. First of all, the process that you developed for tomorrow was a collaborative process. If you remember, we did it together on the meeting on the 19th. It was a spirited discussion. We worked very hard to reach a consensus. We talked about pros and cons of how this could work or whether we should even do it at all. And this was the format that we came up with that everybody agreed to. So for Ray or Becky or Jim to just unilaterally make a change and change some of the protocols and parameters just wouldn't be appropriate. It was a board decision. Secondly, why are the questions structured? Very clear, easy answer for this one. Everything we have done in this search has been based around the leadership profile. The leadership profile was developed collaboratively. It's the one thing that the entire community had a stake in. We have therefore done everything around the leadership profile. We have recruited based on that. We have developed questions based on that, and we've assessed candidates based on that. And board, you remember, you weren't able to freelance questions in the first round. You couldn't just come in and wing it. We developed a set of questions to make sure that all the leadership profile traits were covered. And so we thought and think it's very important to continue to use the leadership profile as the source of questions. We developed really good questions around those, and those are the questions that we need to use for tomorrow. If someone were to come in and ask something based on a personal agenda or something that's not in line with the leadership profile, it won't be valuable anyway, because you are making your decision based on the connection to the leadership profile. So the feedback needs to be in sync. So that's why we decided to structure the questions. Why did we decide to have a certain amount of people and keep it small? Simple answer, confidentiality concerns. As it is, 12 people are going to meet these two candidates. We're hoping that after they sign the confidentiality agreement, that we can feel good about it staying confidential. But we know from our work in BWP, unfortunately, this isn't always the case. I did a search once in a Chicago suburban area. We did the advisory group, and by the next morning, we were aware that confidentiality was breached. By the 24 hours hadn't even passed. So the more people you have involved, the greater the likelihood that confidentiality would be breached. And the final reason for a limited number of people is that we're not going to vote at the end. We're not going to ask the committee who they wanted. We're not going to ask them to rank the two candidates. None of that is helpful. The board is going to make this decision. What is helpful is their input. So the quality of the input is more important than the quantity of people who are there. And so that's the rationale. Should you get any more questions that come up, that is how we've dealt with those, and just thought it was important for you to know. Did you all have any questions for me? I know you've got the one step left, and it's going to be down to the wire. So I'm really confident that this is going to end well. You chose outstanding finalists. You can't make a mistake. They're both fabulous, and pick the one that you think is just the best fit. Questions?
Jim Batson.
I just want to take a moment to thank Dr. Porto and his team for all the assistance and guidance that you've provided to us throughout this process. And it's a very structured process. And even sometimes we become frustrated with the structure, but realize the value of the structure and the value of sticking to a process that's good for everybody. It's good for the candidates. It's good for us. It's good for the community, that recognizes the input of the community, that values the leadership profile that was developed by hundreds and hundreds of people. So we appreciate what you do and the value that you bring to this process. And just wanted to thank you for that.
Could I have my picture taken with you and Ray? That's just for kids. Sorry.
Jim Batson.
Okay. Moving on, we're going to move into the public comment. Just a reminder, we're limiting to 3 minutes, and I'll sort of nudge you when we get to that point. I will also recognize that there's a number of the folks that want to talk about Title IX, and to recognize that a little later in the meeting, we will be getting a report on Title IX. So if that's of interest to you, I encourage you to stick around and listen to that report out. So we'll start with public comments. Laura Weber is first up.
Laura Weber approaches the podium.
Good evening, board members, administrators, and members of the community. My name is Laura Weber. My son is a senior at Libertyville High School, and I have 6th grade boy-girl twins. Tonight, you'll hear the results of the district's Title IX audit and the proposed action plan to address its findings. These results confirm issues that parents raised with the district leaders nearly a year ago. Systemic problems in how this district manages resources, facilities, and oversight in our athletic programs. The parents who raised these concerns had one goal and one goal only: to ensure female athletes receive the same benefits, resources, and recognition as male athletes. This was never about taking anything away from anyone. It's about meeting the district's legal obligations under Title IX and ensuring equal opportunities for all students. The audit findings are clear. Private donations and booster club funds are not being monitored to ensure fairness, leading to disparities between athletic programs at LHS. Locker rooms and facilities are being allocated inequitably, favoring certain teams over others. Oversight of compliance and fundraising is inconsistent, leaving gaps that other districts resolved years ago. What's most troubling is that our highly paid administrators, including the former LHS principal, LHS athletic director, and D128 Title IX coordinator, didn't know that it was their responsibility to monitor booster club funds and third-party donations to ensure compliance. Yet it took an expensive audit and months of parents' advocacy to identify issues that leaders should have addressed proactively. This reflects a failure in leadership, not a lack of resources. While the proposed action plan is a step in the right direction, it falls short in several ways. It lacks urgency. Incremental steps and vague timelines are unacceptable for issues that should have been resolved years ago. It avoids definitive action. Considering a unified booster club model is insufficient when this is a proven best practice. It continues to place the burden on parents. This responsibility belongs to district leaders, not taxpayers advocating for compliance. Board members, as you review the audit findings and the action plan, I urge you to ask some tough questions. Why didn't our district leaders already know their obligations in ensuring Title IX compliance, such as monitoring booster club fundraising and donations? Why is Vernon Hills High School following a unified booster club model, but Libertyville is not? Why has LHS resisted adopting a best practice that a majority of Chicago area high schools embraced years ago? Libertyville High School cannot afford to stay stuck in the past while other districts move forward. This is not just about avoiding liability or meeting the bare minimum of federal compliance. It's about ensuring every student has the same opportunities to succeed, thrive, and be celebrated. Vernon Hills and Libertyville High School both deserve to be schools that we as a community are proud of, schools that lead by example, not lag behind. The time to act is now. Thank you.
Jim Batson.
Thank you. Susan Van Boning?
Susan Van Boning approaches the podium.
My name is Susan Van Boning. I am the parent of an LHS graduate and an LHS senior, and I am speaking to ask you to have the courage to make a change. Tonight, as you publicly review the Title IX draft plan, I want to remind the board of your responsibility to fully comply with Title IX and adopt best practices laid out by the Office of Civil Rights. Title IX is not just a federal mandate. It promises to guarantee that all students, regardless of gender, have access to equitable opportunities in education, athletics, and beyond. When a district fails to uphold its obligation under Title IX, it does more than violate the law. It compromises students' trust and erodes beliefs in our educational systems. Public schools are powerful institutions where girls often have their first experiences learning about their value and worth, shaping their understanding of fairness, equality, and what they're entitled to as individuals. Girls are empowered to believe in their unlimited potential when fairness and equity are prioritized in schools because of Title IX laws. On numerous occasions, I've heard many of you in this room proclaim that District 128 is a destination district. Being a destination district must mean more than compensating our employees in the top 1% as professionals in their fields. Destination districts are defined by their reputations of pillars of professional excellence, leadership, and best practices. Destination districts serves as models of excellence by consistently doing what is right and adhering to the law, even when facing hard truths, addressing discomfort, or retiring outdated traditions. In the current political climate in which we now all operate in, we must default to following the law whenever opinions differ, particularly where specific guidance is plainly stated and legal precedent has already been established. Persistent noncompliance with Title IX damages a district's reputation and erodes the trust of students, parents, and the broader community. When complaints are ignored, mishandled, or pushed down the road for someone else to deal with, it signals a lack of commitment to the values that define an actual destination district. Thus, the reason for this to be handled expeditiously. Your role as a school board is to govern with integrity, ensure policies align with federal law, and avoid legal consequences. It is about affirming that every student matters and deserves equitable treatment. I urge you to approach this draft plan with urgency and transparency, building upon it to ensure meaningful progress, while also being mindful that in this exact moment, our girls are watching how our leaders address equity challenges, and our boys are learning what their female counterparts deserve through the precedent you set in prioritizing these virtues. Thank you.
Jim Batson.
Thank you. Next up, Jeanette.
Jeanette Hyam approaches the podium.
My name is Jeanette Hyam, and I have a junior at LHS. I'm also the Friends of Wildcat softball booster president, so I have clear knowledge into the boosters, how they work at LHS. We have 31 athletic teams at LHS, and we have at least 10 different booster clubs at LHS. So we currently we focus on what we think is best for our athletes for each of those teams. That means 2/3 of the athletic teams at LHS don't have boosters. Right now in the state of Illinois, of the top 25 public athletic high schools per niche in 2024, 22 of them have one athletic booster club with a full focus on all the sports within that school. The 3 out of the 25 that either don't have a booster club or have multiple are Homewood Flossmoor, Maine South, and Libertyville High School. Having one booster has been a point of contention for years, and I've heard the reasons of it is too hard to do. This is the way it's always been done in Libertyville, and things will be taken away from my kids' sport. But I want to highlight for you some of the purchases that were made in 2023 from those top schools with proceeds from booster programs for their athletes, and you tell me if these feel like takeaways for you. A tennis ball machine, huddle software for the sports, cheerleading and wrestling uniforms, new digital scoreboards and sound systems for baseball and softball, football jug machine, new scoreboards for every gymnasium, Freelap e-starter for the girls and boys cross-country program, athletic training room upgrades, expanded bleachers in the stadium, new multi-use scoreboard for the stadium, stunt stand RBXD ankle and wrist weights for cheerleading programs, Dr. Dish basketball shooting machine for boys and girls basketball program, and an auxiliary weight room floor. And what do we use for our LHS boosters? What they've spent on their money on the last 3 years? End of the year gifts for coaches, decorations for homecoming, end of the season banquets, competition gifts, gifts for senior days, meals before games, fireworks, swag bags, new helmets, stickers, extra uniforms, online photo store, spring break tournaments. That includes softball. I'm not talking about one particular sport. I'm talking about all the sports. I also want to highlight that LHS has different athletic logos for some of the teams. Just 3 weeks ago, softball, we created our own logo for our softball swag. Flag football, football, basketball, baseball, dance, cheerleading, lacrosse, and even the LHS athletics have different logos. Why? No wonder we can't have a single booster club. We can't even come up with a single athletic logo for all the athletes to display and be proud of at LHS. As president of Friends of Wildcat Softball, we currently have $8,722.13 in our account. That includes a deposit of $2,500 from the Baxter Credit Union this year. With that money for 2025, we used it. We've already bought 30 plus cold weather jackets for both JV and varsity softball teams, which will be returned with their uniforms at the end of season so that they can be used for years to come. In 2024, BCU donated $5,000 to our team, which we used towards helmets. In 2023, they donated $1,000. That is our biggest single donor for our softball team. And every year we send BCU an acknowledgement letter with the amount they donated, our tax ID number, and a thank you note from the girls on the board. We are transparent with our parents with our money, and all the boosters do the same. For 2025, we are willing to talk about it as a booster club, whether or not we would go into one booster club. And I know that my board would be open to that. At the end of the day, Vernon Hills has a booster club that works. One booster club. LHS deserves it. The athletes deserve it. The coaches deserve it. Coaches should not be spending time managing their budgets, working on inventory, working on supply chain, dealing with parents, and dealing with the LHS administration. They need to be coaching the athletes. They need to be mentoring the athletes. They need to be focused on getting LHS back to where it used to be, one of the top athletic schools in the state. Thank you.
Jim Batson.
Thank you. Dan Kolich.
Dan Nikolic approaches the podium.
Good evening. My name is Dan Nikolic, and I'm an alumni of LHS and a lifelong resident of Libertyville. My oldest son graduated from LHS last year, and my younger son is currently a sophomore. I'm also a volunteer coach with the Libertyville football team. My boys have participated in football, basketball, wrestling, baseball programs at LHS. Their experience has been enhanced by the support of the Booster Club in all sports. I want to thank the administration for the approach they're taking in regards to the Title IX report and speaking to all the organizations to gain a clear understanding of each Booster Club's role and how they use the funds they are raised. When looking at the total funds by each organization, I ask you not to look at the total dollars raised by the organization, but the breakdown of the dollars raised per athlete per sport. I also ask you to review policies 8.8 and 8.9 and the spirit in which they were written. The booster clubs play a vital role in each of our programs, fine arts, and all other clubs at LHS, and each booster is tailored to the needs of that student group. There are no trade secrets in the success of our booster clubs. They're successful because there's a lot of hard work put in by parent volunteers, and we are lucky to live in an amazing supportive community that helps to financially support our programs. Without the parents, our booster clubs would not be successful. I ask you today not to alienate the groups that support our students by going to one booster club. Our community and the experience our students have at LHS is the reason many alumni choose to stay or move back to Libertyville and raise their children here. We have 4 types of people that are involved in LHS. The first group of people have financial means but don't have the time to donate, so they donate money to our organizations to support the booster club. The second group has financial means and the time. They donate both time and money. The third group may not have the financial means, but they donate their time, which is very valuable to the success of our booster clubs. The fourth group are the ones who just want to tear down the amazing things that are done at LHS by our booster clubs. Thank you for taking the approach you're taking and not listening to the voice of a few select people who have their own agenda. Don't let people who want to tear down the great things that are being done at LHS be the ones that you base your decisions on. I raise my hand today to volunteer to sit down and speak with anyone of the administration and or school board to discuss the value of the multiple booster clubs individually and add to the best practices of each of them. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Marnie Navarro.
Marnie Navarro approaches the podium.
Good evening, Marnie Navarro, lifelong Libertyville resident, proud District 70 and 128 graduate, and candidate for the District 128 school board for upcoming elections. Number one, I want to thank the board and the administration and our fantastic superintendent search committee for listening to the community's request that the 7 candidates for the 5 board seats were going to be included in the superintendent search process. We really appreciate it. I think that's really, it's a good signal to the community that you all are listening. This is a collaborative process. Thank you very much. I just wanted to speak very briefly on the Title IX audit. Again, this format is difficult because we haven't heard the presentation yet, so we actually don't know what you guys are going to say. We've seen the document and that's it. So it's kind of difficult to respond substantively without hearing the presentation first. I would, however, like to dispute I heard the 3 initial comments saying that the law is clear, findings are clear, law is settled. I absolutely disagree with the Trump inauguration and the complete gutting of the Department of Education. I note in the audit that you all had done at the cost of $30,000 to the district, there was no case law citation. And the only case law citation I could find for the premise that is predicated upon the findings was some administrative guidance with respect to booster club funding. I will note that Title IX is changing by the day and by the hour with Trump's inauguration and the new executive agencies, such that I would urge caution to this board. Law is not established by any means. In addition, there was a U.S. Supreme Court decision called Loper that came down last July in 2024. Loper stands for the proposition that the Chevron deference doctrine has been overruled. What that means is that there is no more dispositive weight given to executive agency guidance. A federal court may look at Title IX and independently interpret it. So just because a previous administration's executive agency said something, that's not law. That's not Title IX. So I would urge caution. And I think that we should, again, I think that our focus should be that, sorry, just one second. Yes, and especially with the incoming, we have 5 of 7 board positions up for election on April the 1st. We have a new superintendent incoming. We have a bunch of admin positions that their contracts are up in July of 2025. Therefore, let's be very measured and intentional with regard to next steps so as not to take the opportunities away from our students. That should be our number one overriding collective goal. Let's find ways to say yes, not no. I can't tell you how many parents have come to me and told me how they are deeply concerned. For example, Wildcat Productions, they got vetoed from filming one of the boys' football playoff games in the name of equity. Also, the boys' football team was not allowed to go to the Bears game for tickets that were offered, all in the name of equity. This makes a lot of the members of the community very upset and sad because we're denying kids once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. So I would just say, let's get this right. Let's get it right together. We have a new incoming board, administration, new president, new executive agencies. Let's pause. Let's be very measured and get this right. Students first. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate everyone's comments. Anyone else wish to address the board? Okay.
John Hetzel approaches the podium.
Okay. My name's John Hetzel. You all know who I am. I have daughters in the high school here at Vernon Hills. Nice to see everybody tonight. I'd like to take a quick minute here and provide a little background on myself so there aren't misconceptions about me before addressing a current policy issue affecting the school system here. I didn't grow up in the North Shore. I lived reality in several major cities, including New York, Chicago, Cleveland, Louisville, Tampa, Dallas, St. Louis, and Toronto. And I lived in the cities, and I lived in a lot of different neighborhoods, all with diverse communities of all people. Here's some context. In the late 70s, before college, I worked for a furniture installation company in Tampa with 30 employees. It was gay owned and operated, and my friend Jason Bonar got me the job. We all lived in the area and in a gay neighborhood and community, and everybody worked and interacted and lived harmoniously. That was the 70s. After college in the mid-80s, I lived in New Jersey City across from the World Trade Center. It was 98% Puerto Rican. I was the only 6'2" blonde gringo in the neighborhood for blocks. My neighbor below me was a gay merchant marine. He was a great guy. Everybody lived and worked harmoniously. In the early 90s, I went to the gay bars and gay and straight friends in New York and Chicago. Everybody interacted and lived harmoniously. In the late 80s, I owned an art gallery at Berry and Broadway before Boys Town became Boys Town. The trannies used to come Saturday night and visit. It was a lot of fun. We had a great time. Everybody lived and interacted harmoniously. Then in the late 80s and early 90s, I worked for the only minority-owned and operated Herman Miller dealership in the United States, owned and operated by Unita and Costello Johnson. Everybody lived and worked harmoniously. Throughout the 90s and 2000s, I worked for a couple companies with diverse employee bases, working side by side with my direct reports. It didn't matter, gay, black, white, Hispanic, Asian. Everybody worked and interacted harmoniously. My daughters in St. Louis, in their early years, they were unequivocally the minority in their classroom. So why do I bring all this up? Because there's an overwhelming DEI push the last few years. And my point is, we have been living with the community of diversity and inclusion for decades. So let's stop fabricating a false pretense to promote an ideology. These students today have been living in a diverse and inclusive society since they were born. I stated this in public comment 2.5 years ago and repeat it here again tonight. The students don't care about the diversity and inclusion has been their upbringing because it's been their upbringing. Just look at their friend groups. DEI promotes an ideology over academics, and it creates divisiveness. DEI, as we know, is biased, discriminatory, and racist in practice as determined by the federal courts and SCOTUS and common sense. A few years ago, DEI was implemented everywhere, universities, colleges, corporations, and $1 billion was spent by the past administration implementing it. Now it's being disbanded everywhere, major corporations, colleges, universities, government. The DEI platform implemented in D128 costs the taxpayers so much money in consulting fees. One more minute, please. In consulting fees and bad hires, not competent in the new positions created the last 4 years unnecessarily. It did not provide any improved measurable academic results in D128. It only resulted in lawsuits and buyouts and student scores going backwards the last few years. The district surveys don't even prove out that discrimination is an issue among the students. So why continue to push a misguided narrative? So what I would like to say at this time, everyone is entitled to liberty and justice for all, but not when DEI policy conflicts with liberty and justice for all, being inherently discriminatory and racist in application. Let's go back to the basics. Let people simply be themselves without promoting one group over another. Thank you.
Anybody else like to address the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Teacher union report, Monica.
Monica Caldecott approaches the podium.
Hello, good evening. I was going to say Happy New Year, but it seems like a really long time ago. So I'm Monica Caldecott. I am librarian in this amazing school library, and I'm president of the D128 Federation of Teachers. Thank you for listening to me tonight. When one of my classroom colleagues assigns their students a research project, they help their students tackle a long-term assignment by setting check-in dates and progress updates. For example, last week, Vernon Hills juniors showed off their 4 months of historical research in history fair museum exhibits, websites, documentaries, and research papers. I learned a lot from a great museum exhibit about Native American boarding schools, several excellent projects focusing on the desegregation of public education, and I also enjoyed a lively documentary about the power of art during the civil rights movement. Our district is undertaking a big research project too, planning for the 2025-26 school year. And I think the helpful concept of check-in dates and progress updates can help us look ahead to important dates and expected decisions. Starting in November and December and continuing this month, we have been tackling the first steps of that research project. A joint committee of representatives from our teachers union and our fellow union of educational support professionals have been meeting with administrators to consider the current tangle of multiple tiers of support and tutoring. It is our union's goal to return teachers to the center of tutoring and student support. We have also been meeting weekly with administration and members of this Board of Education to negotiate a new contract after our current teacher's contract expires on June 30th, 2025. These are some ongoing parts of the ongoing research project that is running a school district. So let's look ahead to the upcoming check-in dates. In January, students have been selecting the courses they want to take in the 2025-26 school year. Our course brochures are full of interesting classes such as African American Studies, Intro to Engineering Design, and Style Studio. Our students are also saying they want to continue to add skills and knowledge with advanced classes such as Dance 3, AP Latin, and STEM Capstone. We will be watching to see if student interest translates into D128 offering these classes. Our teachers were just as dismayed as our students last year when several popular classes were not offered, even with sufficient student requests. The planning workload ramps up in February when administration will take those course selection requests and convert them into course sections with teachers assigned. This class sectioning process applies agreed upon class optimums, the number of students in a class that achieves an optimal learning environment, and that determines the number of teachers who will work. Our union is now an active participant in this class sectioning process, and we look forward to adding our essential point of view to administrative decisions. Ask our U.S. history teachers how they graded their students' research projects. They look for rock-solid sources written by history experts. They look for purposeful writing, and they check if the thesis, the main argument of the research project, is supported by the students' research. In the same way, our union will be listening and watching as the district plans for the 2025-26 school year. Unfortunately, we were allotted only one voice in the interview process for a new superintendent, which doesn't match the strength of our 300 members. We will negotiate a contract that shows how this district values its teachers. We will speak up for our students during class sectioning so that they can take the classes they want and in classrooms that are not over the optimum class size. And one final message directed right to our students. Perhaps you've heard some conversations about the value of DEI, which means diversity, equity, and inclusion. Your teachers want you to know that your identity and background, your family's culture and religion, your individual needs and interests are welcome in our classrooms. We see that when our students feel valued, respected, and included, they are more likely to be engaged, motivated, and productive. And we are here to bring out your best work and your best selves. We also want you to know that you are safe in our classrooms. We got you.
Thank you very much.
Momentary pause.
The education support, do we have a representative from the ESP union?
Pause for response.
No? Okay. We'll move on. We have an update from the D128 Foundation.
Kristen Slavish and Diane Phillips approach the podium.
Good evening. Hello, board members. So happy to be here. We really appreciate this spot on your agenda. I'm Kristen Slavish, and I'm the proud Vernon Hills mom of one graduate and one junior. And I'm also the chair of our foundation board of trustees. So hopefully everyone's familiar with our foundation, but we're here to give you just a brief and important update about what we've been doing. So the work that we do directly impacts the life of students, either through our educators or through students directly. And we spent a good amount of time last year doing strategic planning to make sure that we felt that we were on track with how we were spending our time and really how we're spending the funds that we raise from the community. So as part of that strategic plan, we have a mission that's really quite simple. Our mission is to support success for all students by funding innovative learning experiences and meeting unmet student needs. We're going to share a little bit more about that. But the cool thing is, today, I'm so glad that it's an unusual having the board meeting on a Tuesday, I believe, because here we are in 128. We're the 128 Foundation for Learning, and today kicks off our giving campaign. No coincidence there. We always do a big giving campaign around January 28th to symbolize our foundation. So this campaign, which launches today and runs through the week, is a huge fundraising opportunity for us. This is where we raise money from the community that funds all of our important programs. So students on the board, your peers, or you if you choose, if you happen to be seniors, can apply for scholarships that are provided by our foundation. And we've actually expanded that program this year. So we're offering a higher dollar amount into more students. So we're really excited about that. Teachers, thank you so much for all of the grants that you submit to us each year. We're blown away when we see the innovation, the creativity, the commitment to students, the excitement from teachers. I'm so proud to be attached to this district. And each year we grant special learning opportunities that impact so many of our students across both Vernon Hills High School, Libertyville High School, and also Transitions Pathways. And we also provide funding for students in need. So as part of our mission, you know, we need to make sure that we can do whatever we need to do so that all students are ready to learn. And sometimes there's something really small that gets in their way. We recently heard from a counselor at Libertyville High School that there was a student that stopped coming to school. Once they looked into this, the counselor figured out that the student was ashamed because she had holes in her pants and was being made fun of. 2 pairs of pants later, the student hasn't missed a day and has perfect attendance. So simple. So these are little things that we raise funds for, and our counselors, in all of their wisdom, along with the social workers, figure out where these funds are best spent to make sure that students are able to have equal opportunity to learn and are ready to go. So with that, I'm going to go over and pass over to our Executive Director, Diane, to tell you a little bit more about our stats.
I'll keep it short. I'm Diane Phillips. I'm the Executive Director of the Foundation, and there are some handouts that are coming around, and those people in the audience, they're on the back table. What you are receiving is our annual review, our annual report, and then some information about our 128 giving campaign that kicked off today. Behind me is a slide that will show the financial commitment that the foundation has given to the district since 2007. The blue paw that is behind me summarizes what was given last year, a total of $48,000, 16 grants that were given to staff members for a total of $31,000. 8 senior student scholarships, and $12,500 was given to students in need. The orange paw is a summary of all of the donations that we've given to the schools since 2007. $608,000 in the form of innovation grants and projects, 465,000, 208 grants that we've given to our teachers. I love that number. 28 scholarships total, and 129,000 that we've given back to our students in need. The second slide that you see is basically our announcement for our 128 Day of Giving. And for those that are watching remotely, or that are in the library tonight, there is a QR code that you'll see in one of the handouts that you have. And we'd love for you to QR code it and just look at some of the highlights. We have videos that we've produced and comments and pictures of the students that received our scholarships last year. And basically more information about our 128 Day of Giving. It's our 6th annual Day of Giving. Board, the District 128 Foundation for Learning thanks you for your continued partnership with us. Together, we are making a lasting impact on the lives of District 128 students, and we look forward to continuing our collaboration with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate the foundation, and it's been a great journey to watch the foundation grow over these years since its inception. And I congratulate you on all the work that you do and all the things that you support. Any other board members have any other comments? Okay, we'll move on. Next up, student school board representative reports. Take it away.
That's good. Good evening, everyone. Since the last board meeting, many exciting events have occurred at LHS, from welcoming future Wildcats to connecting our two schools through activities and culture. This year has been off to a great start. LHS recently held this year's 8th grade orientation, introducing new freshmen to all that the school has to offer. The orientation allowed students to learn about all the resources that our school offers and dive deeper into course selection. When speaking with current juniors and underclassmen, they expressed the sentiment that the event is most helpful for helping students understand course selection and making students feel supported from the very beginning of their high school experience. Reflecting upon my own experience, having a virtual orientation during the pandemic, an in-person orientation serves as a great way for students to become more comfortable with the school before they start before their freshman year. On the academic side, our Science Olympiad team continues to set a high standard of excellence and has shown measurable growth over years past. With months of preparation, the team has been hard at work competing at invitationals such as the Crystal Lake, Central, and Libertyville Invite. As the Libertyville Science Olympiad continues to improve, they narrow closer and closer to Vernon Hills team. Outside of the school, Libertyville's API Unite partnered with Vernon Hills Asian Student Association for an afternoon of cultural celebration and connection. Students from both schools gathered at VHHS to enjoy a white elephant gift exchange and share delicious food. Similarly, Libertyville's API Unite and South Asian Student Association also partnered together for a meeting last month where they decorated cookies. A leader from API, Tyler Knutson, stated, "I think it's super important to connect with other clubs to celebrate each other's interests. It's great that our club can have the opportunity to meet with other clubs like SASA as well as ASA from Vernon Hills. It really helps us not only connect with other areas of our school, but also the district in general. These collaborative meetings between clubs reflect the district-wide commitment to building meaningful relationships and fostering cultural awareness. Throughout the past month and even the past year, I've observed how our two schools have become increasingly connected. While we may be geographically set apart, we have become connected by the bonds between our students. Together, we are building a community that not only looks toward the future, but also supports one another in achieving it." So now I'm going to read Victoria's board report as she cannot make it as she's feeling under the weather. So last week on Thursday, January 23rd, LHS held the conference cheer competition between LHS, Stevenson, Mundelein, Waukegan, Zion, Lake Forest, Warren, and Lake Zurich. Both the JV and varsity teams completed and finished amazing. Libertyville's JV cheer team finished in first place for the third year in a row, and varsity finished in second place behind Stevenson. Caitlin Rojas, a senior cheerleader, described it as a crazy experience. The energy in the gym was intense, especially when we competed, as a lot of friends and family came to support. However, it was a little bittersweet because it is her last year competing at home. Furthermore, Scarlett Mayers, a junior and captain of the team, specifically highlighted that there was a sense of comfort in competing at home for conference due to the familiar faces and environment. Autumn, another senior on the team, excitingly commented on how LHS got their highest score of the season, which was a 91, and the energy in the room was so high that it made performing even more fun. LHS also hosted the dance team sectionals competition on Saturday, January 25th. Similar to the cheer team, Sophia Thedos, a senior and captain of the dance team, agreed that performing at home allowed them to feel more comfortable and allowed them to really be able to focus on the spacing since we were able to compete at home. They performed their lyrical dance called Somebody to Love. The dance team got second place and is going to advance to the state competition this Friday in Bloomington. She also added, although setting everything up was a lot of work, it was very comforting knowing that was going to be my first and last time competing on the LHS floor. Ellie Peroni, another senior on the team, highlighted that LHS specifically scored very high in their turn sequence. Both the cheer team and dance teams did extraordinarily well and loved being able to compete at home because of their sense of comfort and support it brought. Next week, the cheer team will be competing in sectionals and the dance team will compete in state. Good luck to both.
Sire Abraham.
Good evening. Today I want to talk about the progress of LHS's academically focused teams in an upcoming student-focused event called Wildcat Summit. To begin, after returning to school from winter break, LHS's academically focused teams jumped right back into action, with many of them preparing for the more important competitions of the season. For example, Academic Decathlon, a team where students compete against other schools in a variety of subjects, all focused on an annual theme, competed in regionals right after returning to school. Member Lynn George says, "This year's overarching theme of climate change has shown me a variety of subjects through a lens that I wouldn't have thought to see them through. Overall, being on the team has been a very fun experience, and I can't wait to compete at the state level." Additionally, Scholastic Bowl is also preparing for the defining competitions that wrap up their season. Specifically, student athletes who play outdoor sports are thankful to have the opportunity to participate in activities like these because it gives them something to do in the parts of the year where they aren't as involved. Aside from thriving clubs, students are looking forward to the annual Wildcat Summit, an event where students get together for a day to have a discussion about healthy minds, healthy bodies, healthy relationships, and more. The discussions are mainly centered on what students can do to create and improve these factors in their everyday lives. Additionally, some LHS students will even be sharing some of their own personal stories regarding these factors that have been prevalent in their lives. The event as a whole creates a safe space where students can engage with topics that aren't often talked about or may be hard for students to face. Overall, the purpose of the event is to make students feel more comfortable with themselves and their peers. Audrey Amiot, a senior director for the event, says, "Giving students the chance to freely speak on topics like relationships, discourse, health, and other relevant topics is crucial to building a tight-knit community and strengthening relationships between students at LHS. In past years, this event has seen lots of success as it contributes to a more inclusive and supportive school environment, and it's expected to do the same this year as well." Overall, students are enjoying a productive start to the new semester, whether it's through pursuing academic challenges or engaging in meaningful activities. Activities like the ones listed highlight LHS's commitment to fostering both personal and academic growth among its students. Thank you.
Daniela Gomez Anez.
Now for Vernon Hills. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to share some amazing things that Cougars have been up to recently. Many individuals helped out in the 8th grade orientation 2 weeks ago. Whether it was ushering, giving tours, helping at booth, or speaking in the auditorium, Stephen Posner and I had the opportunity to speak about all the wonderful activities available at VHHS during orientation. At first, I was nervous about speaking in front of a bunch of 8th graders and their families, but it ended up being a lot of fun. Many seniors who helped out in the orientation later attended the FAFSA workshop on January 22nd to learn how to set it up. This time of year is especially hard for seniors waiting to hear back from colleges and experiencing a lack of motivation. Senior Catherine Din mentions she's dealing with heavy senioritis and feels overwhelmed with college decisions coming out, but she's also excited to see where everyone ends up next year. Meanwhile, other Cougars are wrapping up their winter seasons. For example, the dance team has had an amazing season. Senior Layla Schumacher reports that the team achieved 2 first-place finishes, 1 second-place finish, and 2 third-place finishes. At sectionals in Libertyville last weekend, the top 6 teams qualified for state, and the Cougars secured their spot at the state for the 5th year in a row. Layla shared that the team is super excited and ready to do our best. Similarly, senior Caleb Gumminger, speaking on behalf of Varsity Boys Bowling, says, "We bowled the 6,200 series through 6 games with 5 bowlers. That's an average of 200 points per person. Our top finishers were Zach Shoemaker and Scott Wolf, who placed 3rd and 4th individually. It's extremely remarkable work. After their great work at the sectional meet, the boys bowling team has now qualified for state, taking place on Friday and Saturday." Additionally, in sports, Laura Kashadova with Varsity Girls Wrestling, who was a conference champion along with another Cougar, says that conference was really fun to have guys and girls matches happening together, especially for the championship matches. With a bigger team there, it felt a lot more fun. As for the rest of the winter sports, varsity cheer already brought home a conference win Likewise, swimming and gymnastics are hoping to bring in a conference title home in the coming weeks. Now passing it off to Iman.
Eamon Diala.
Good evening, everyone. We're excited to see everyone back from break, and things have been flourishing here at VHHS. To begin, our Science Olympiad has competed in 2 invitationals this past month, one of which was the home invite / Libertyville invite, in which we came in first place. Additionally, this past Saturday, we competed out at Crystal Lake Central, where we had a variety of awards and placed 3rd overall. Junior Michael Deng says that these invites provide him with an excellent opportunity to collaborate with people and challenge the boundaries of thinking. Speaking of clubs, VHHS has had several new clubs start up this semester. These clubs include Flag, Mock Trial, and Enviro. One of the clubs, Flag, spent time putting together blankets for those out in the cold. What a great way to support the community. As for Enviro, Junior Eva Zhang shares that they made DIY terrariums and that teachers can adopt one to keep in their classroom. She hopes to use this club as a chance to build a school garden and a composting program. We're so excited to see what these clubs have in store. Next, VHHS recently hosted the annual D128 STEAM Showcase. This was an opportunity for students to showcase their projects that were part of science, technology, engineering, entrepreneurships, equity, art, and math to win prizes. Adin Naik shared his project, an electric vehicle, which promotes clean energy use. Regarding the experience, he said he liked how he got to share a personal passion project, because for STEM right now, a lot of clubs revolve around competition, but this was purely a showcase. Finally, we're excited to announce some incredible news. Vernon Hills' new principal will be Dr. Young. The process that went into choosing him involved input from students, staff members, district members, and even parents who got to hear him give a well-detailed presentation and answer questions in relation to his future role. Cougars all over the building are reporting that they're ecstatic about Dr. Young and his new role. I even got to hear a freshman refer to him as the new king. That's all for me, so passing it on to Griffin.
Griffin Nichols.
It's hard to sort of do after that, but good evening, everybody. I'm happy to report that Vernon Hills is starting off second semester strong. Our students are working hard and deciding what they want to take next year as a class. I'm glad to say that most of, if not all of our offerings are staying the same from last year. Freshmen have had the chance to choose their courses, and a popular one that I've heard from Jack Jansen is AP Euro. Sophomores, on the other hand, like Tamer Arzmanov, look forward to physics, and juniors such as Eugene Kim look forward to AP Lit. Our students can't wait to experience the opportunities Vernon Hills has to offer. Alongside course selection, we recently had our U.S. History Fair. For those who don't know, the Junior Year History Fair is an event where juniors in any U.S. history class make a historical event-themed project. This can be a trifold, a documentary, or a research paper. The theme for this year was rights and responsibilities. All of our students' projects were put up on display Thursday and Friday last week in this room. Some of the most interesting projects that I saw were the Montgomery bus boycott and what Miss Caldwell pointed out, the trifold on Indian boarding schools. Now, the very best of these projects will head on to regionals and then hopefully state, and hopefully again, as last year, we have people making it on to nationals. I also want to highlight a unique thing that happened this year for our fair is that Congressman Brad Schneider, who represents the 10th District of Illinois, was able to visit our school and see the fair. He visited the LMC, walking through the rows of projects and conversing with students who had done the work. I hope he had a phenomenal experience and will return to talk to our senior government classes. That's all for Vernon Hills this month. Thank you.
Jim Batson.
Thank you very much to all of you. I always learned quite a bit, although I think this is one of the earlier times I've heard senioritis mentioned this year. So, but it's coming. It's coming. board members have comments or questions? Thank you. Yeah, okay. Moving on, we have some FOIA requests listed there for your reading. And then any questions or anything about those? Okay, I'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Yes, I'm happy to share some more good news tonight. I have 2 items. First is at Vernon Hills. The students and computer science teacher Adam Lukin have been recognized as Infy Maker Award winners. This incredible achievement comes with a $10,000 grant, which will help turn their vision for an accessible living camp into reality this summer. I want to congratulate these students, Aishi Agarwal, Ashani Anand, Lasi Manikonda, Pratika Barman, Zoe Mehta, and Abraham Gao. Now, what we're hoping is that these students can join us at a future board meeting so we can hear all the details of the accessible living camp. Next is Libertyville High School. We have a graduate named Mallory Marvin, and she has been selected to compete in the 2025 Special Olympics World Winter Games in Turin, Italy in March. Mallory will compete in snowshoeing, an event she also competed as a member of the District 28 Special Olympics team. We wish Mallory and her team of U.S. athletes all the best. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, our Title IX audit.
Yes, thank you. So our Title IX audit, if you recall, back August 26, 2024, at a regular Board of Education meeting, the board took action to approve the recommendation of Kriya Bocek, a law firm, to represent us specifically in the matters of our Title IX audit. And so we hired, the board hired Kriya Bocek back in August to conduct a Title IX audit. The audit auditors provide some recommendations that are included in the board report. So you have a cover sheet, you have then the detailed audit. Those were completed and shared with you at the beginning of January. They also have been shared with the public since the beginning of January. But at this time, we do want to allow Stephanie Jones from Kriya Bocek to give us a brief overview of the process of the Title IX audit, and then we will follow up and share that everyone has access to also is our action plan on that Title IX audit. Stephanie?
Thank you. And I first off, I just want to thank the board and the administration for trusting us with this audit. My name is Stephanie Jones. I'm a partner at Kriya Bocek. We are a school law firm, but we are not your school law firm. So we did an independent audit of the of your Title IX, making sure this works.
Pause for slide.
Click in there.
Okay, there we go. All right. So we did an independent audit of your Title IX programming, and that really we look at 3 parts, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. In order to do the audit, we followed OCR's compliance manual. So when we've done audits in the past, we find that OCR's compliance manual is the best process to follow. That's what OCR would follow if they were to come in and do an investigation or an audit of your programming. And so that when we do audits, that's typically what we follow. I was here for your public comment, and I did hear I did hear comments about case law and not case law and things like that. And we note that there was not a lot of case law cited in our report because the case law is much more of macro case law, and it looks a lot more at sexual harassment than it does look at equity between athletics or non-athletic activities. There's not case law, for example, that discusses how booster clubs should be handled by a school district. So we rely on guidance. We rely on the OCR compliance manual. We rely on other comparable cases to make our recommendations. And then we wanted to make sure that you were aware as a board that district and building administration were very transparent with us. They gave us full access to the people that we needed and documents. They made sure that they connected us with community members, students, and staff members that could give us a full picture of your athletic and non-athletic activities so we could fully perform the audit.
Pause for slide.
Just let me know, as a little background about how Elizabeth and I proceeded for the evaluation process. Elizabeth Kelly is one of my colleagues in the office. She did actually all the information gathering. So she was my boots on the ground who interviewed your staff members, your students, the adults, the parents, and would be here tonight, but she is actually 6 days overdue for delivering a baby. So she could not come. But then when she brought the evidence back to the office, she and I went through the information that she gathered, went through the compliance manual, and really applied the standards. What gives us the credibility, the ability to do these kinds of audits? Kribotech, we're attorneys, so obviously we read and interpret the law. But in addition to that, I spent a chunk of my career as the general counsel for the Illinois State Board of Education. So understanding that the compliance aspect of how people comply with the law is a big part of my career. Understanding and working with the Office of Civil Rights was part of my responsibility as general counsel of the state board. So that's why I had Elizabeth gather the information, but then she and I did the analysis and the application together. In doing all of that, we reviewed a number of records for both schools, which included schedules of practice. We looked at budgets. We looked at athletic participation. We looked at coaching stipends. We reviewed your board policies. We reviewed the legal resources and guidance that I already mentioned. Elizabeth visited both schools and toured facilities. She took pictures and brought them back to me, and then met with various coaches, athletes, parents, and staff from each school. In looking at this, we were looking at your programming in 3 parts. Number one, we wanted to look at athletic participation opportunities. So really, do we have equity between men and women in numbers in terms of their participation? Then we wanted to look at equal treatment for participants. Were the men and women participating in your sports receiving equal benefits in the programming that they were participating in? And then the third part we looked at is your non-athletic activity participation.
Pause for slide.
So some of the things that we analyzed in terms of participation opportunities, the way that the Office of Civil Rights looks at participation opportunities is they look at it proportionally. So they take the number of men and women that you have proportionally in your schools, and then they look at the men and women that you have participating in sports. And if percentage-wise those about balance out, then they tend to find that your proportionality is acceptable for opportunities. And so when we examined the participation opportunities, you can see that proportionally over the last 3 years, you guys, any sort of disparity really falls within what we would consider a discrepancy interval. Sometimes the math works out, sometimes the math doesn't. But that the disparity numbers, we want them to be as low as possible. And yours are below 2%. And in some cases, they are below 1%. And in the 23-24 school year, at Libertyville High School, it was 0.01%. So really in terms of equity and participation, you guys are better than a majority of the schools that we work with and that we've audited.
Pause for slide.
That leads us to equal treatment of participants. And this really gets into how do we allocate equipment and supplies? How are game times scheduled and practice time scheduled? How are we allocating travel and per diem monies? How do we look at opportunities for coaching and assignments? We look at facilities, locker rooms, practice facilities, the competitive facilities, medical care and athletic training, and then publicity for teams. And so in looking at all of this, we gathered information about your equipment and supplies. We gathered your scheduling considerations. We looked at access to facilities. I realize I'm clicking through mine and it's not clicking through here. I apologize. Is it clicking through here?
It is.
Okay,
It is.
sorry. We looked at per diems. We looked at coaching. We looked at training staff. We looked at each, under each factor, we looked at a number of different things like the frequency of promotion for teams. And then we did look at your additional benefits in terms of private donations, your booster clubs, your parent donations, your team fundraisers, and then the school efforts to mitigate any difference between that funding. So I'm going to talk about some of the highlights and lowlights of that aspect, of that participation aspect in 1 minute. But I want to talk, before I get to that, I want to talk about your activities and fine arts. And what we found in that is very basic. You guys have a tremendous rate of student participation in non-athletic activities. It's very inclusive. It is very balanced between men and women, and your fine arts are very well funded. And so without,
Excuse me. I'm
yes.
sorry to interrupt you, but I think you are lagged.
Oh,
Yep.
I just want
There we go.
Fine, thank you.
all right. So your fine arts are very well funded. So I don't want to spend a lot of time highlighting your non-athletic activities because we really made no substantive findings relative to those activities. We think that your participation is on par, as is your support and the resources that you're providing to those activities.
Pause for slide.
So let's highlight our review of your athletic activities. We received a lot of positive feedback from your student athletes, your coaches, students, and parents regarding the athlete experience at both high schools. We did receive some concerns. Most concerns actually turned out to be non-sex based. So people were concerned about transportation. It's an issue in all sports, regardless of sex. So all of your activities have some issues with transportation. There were some questions about the quality of locker rooms, particularly at Libertyville High School. There were questions about space for spring sports, both indoor and outdoor space. That it was commented by a variety of teams that space is at a premium and hard to come by. And then the question about promotion of teams is largely a team by team activity. So teams are promoting themselves. They're mostly doing that on social media. And because they're doing it themselves, it can be kind of uneven. Some of your teams are very active in promotions. Some of them don't promote themselves very, very much at all. We did find that athletic training services at Vernon Hills High School could be extended during the school day. That is available at Libertyville High School. And we think that would be something that would be a positive. But that, again, is a non-sex-based activity or option for you, that it's something that's not offered at Vernon Hills High School at all. So it's not a Title IX type issue.
Pause for slide.
Now we looked at the other issues as things that we see as opportunities. We have opportunities to do better in some places and try to improve the opportunities you have for both sexes, but particularly for your women's sports. We think that locker rooms at both schools should be reviewed. We want to make sure that there's an equitable distribution of space, and we want to make sure that usability is there for both male and female locker roomes. So that is something that we've made recommendations about, making sure that we're reviewing locker rooms. And I know that in the action plan that your administration is moving forward, they already have some information and some steps that they're taking regarding the locker rooms right away, and some other long-term planning to be done. We think we need to continue to monitor and stay on top of the scheduling for practices and games. This is an area where we see many, many, many high schools struggle because you are limited on space and availability of facilities. And so making sure that you are being cognizant of how you are dividing up those facilities, I think, is something that all school districts should look at, but we do recommend that here we are cognizant of making sure that we are being equitable about scheduling, and not only for game time, but also for practice time, and then that division of space. And then the last piece that we think that the school district needs to pay attention to is the disparity between private donations and the funding that the school district is allocating towards sports. So this is an area that is tricky, and it is tricky because there is no clear guidance from the Department of Education, in case law, or anywhere that says exactly how funding should happen for activities. And so when we look at how fundraising impacts what you spend and what opportunities a team may have, we need to be careful about how we're creating funding formulas or considering funding for how we support sports. There are a number of different ways to do this. There are districts across the state that have very strong booster programs that then offset some of the money that boosters spend on sports that are heavily funded, and then spend more district money on other sports. There are school districts that have unified booster programs where the booster money goes to all district sports. There are a number of different ways to approach it, the important piece of that is that we approach it in a way that allows teams to have equitable access to similar opportunities. It isn't necessarily dollar for dollar spending. It isn't necessarily equal opportunities, but it's equitable opportunities. And it's a balancing act. It's something that districts all over the country, frankly, struggle with. But there are ways to do it. And we have worked or discussed with the administration some different approaches that can be taken to better understand the booster funding, particularly at LHS, so that funding can be allocated in the most fair way possible, so students have more equitable or have equitable opportunities.
Pause for slide.
I'm not going to present the action plan that your administration came up with, but I did meet with them and we talked very much about the actions that they were contemplating and putting together. I think it's an appropriate plan. I think the plan looks forward towards having new systems or reconsidered systems in place for the 25-26 school year, which I think is an appropriate timeline. I think the administration is proposing a fairly ambitious cycle of planning, considering that additional information needs to be collected, and considering the fact that locker rooms are physical plant issues that can't change overnight. And those are the biggest things. The two biggest recommendations we're making is related to your locker room facilities and then your funding formulas. And so neither of those are things that I would recommend quick action on. I would recommend that the administration and the board take deliberate action on those things so that we don't make mistakes moving forward by moving too quickly. And at that, you guys received a 40+ page report. I didn't want to give you a repeat of the report. I want to be available if you have specific questions. I'm happy to support however you guys need. We are grateful for the opportunity to be able to support you in this process. I think that that both Elizabeth and I were impressed with the work that you do and the support that you provide your students. And I heard a lot of that tonight from your students who were talking about the great things that are happening here. So any questions?
Jim Batson.
Anybody? Thank you for your presentation. Anyone have any questions you'd like to ask at this point?
Cara Drumkey.
Well, I just, thank you. Sorry. So you've reviewed the action plan. I guess from what I'm hearing from your report and also today, there's nothing that you found so egregious or so clearly a violation of the law that would require immediate action today.
We didn't find anything that I would classify as egregious at all.
Okay.
I think that when I sat down with your administrators and talked about how I would classify issues, I think there's some gaps. I think that when I talk about gaps, I think that I can't quantify those gaps at this point in time, especially when we talk about the funding, because we really need to pull that booster funding, particularly at Libertyville High School, and dig into it and figure out dollar for dollar how much money is allocated booster and school district wide to men's sports versus women's sports. And that's data that we didn't dig into we didn't get into that much detail as part of the audit. But I think that's what needs to happen next.
And the action plan that you've reviewed, you think, I just want to reiterate, you think the time frame is actually advantageous?
I think it's aggressive. I mean, I think it's aggressive and I think it's appropriate, I should say. I mean, we're a handful of days away from February 1st. And the action plan that we discussed would have a new plan or, a revised type of budgeting plan in place by the beginning of next school year, which I think we're talking about February, March, April, May, June, July. You're talking about a little more than 6 months to do that analysis, to reallocate money, to be able to communicate that to teams and be prepared for the opening of the school year. And that includes dealing with all of the end of the year other issues that school districts deal with. I think that that's appropriate and relatively ambitious. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Jim Batson.
And I think that plan is, you implied, is the beginning. It's not
Yes.
the end.
Yes.
It's where we get started, and then this is going to be an ongoing process to ensure that we move in the right direction and continue to move in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that one of your public commenters mentioned the fact that Title IX is changing rapidly right now. And there's no question that with the new administration, that guidances, educational guidances in general are changing rapidly. I went to look for one that was literally released in December, and it's not on the Department of Education's website anymore. So that is happening. But these sex equity issues in Title IX have been pretty standard for, I mean, really since the early 1980s. Like the equitability of sports and activities and how we balance those out, that piece of the law hasn't changed. The piece of the law regarding sexual harassment is evolving by the moment, but I think these pieces haven't changed. And so I feel pretty strongly that moving forward, we're basing our recommendations on solid guidance that won't change in a heartbeat.
Anybody else? Okay, then we'll move on to
Brian Kelly.
who's presenting the plan.
I will be. So first of all, I'd
Thank
like
you.
to thank Stephanie Jones and Elizabeth Kelly for their work from Korea Bochek. Also like to publicly thank John Woods and Brian McDonald, coaches and the parents and the students that participated and spent time. There was a lot of time that was spent, whether it was in interviews or sharing information. So there was a lot that went into that audit. Again, going back to August, we put a timeline that we wanted to get the audit done by the end of first semester. And we were right there in getting it completed right after winter break because there was a lot of information that was shared. Some of the, before we get in the audit action plan, I think some of the highlights that Stephanie shared with the participation rates of our female and male athletes and those percentages. Over the years, we've expanded female athletics from badminton to flag football to girls wrestling and those opportunities. And those opportunities also come with, changing schedules around, whether that's practice time, facilities, and games. And I think that the athletic directors, John, Brian, and also the conference athletic directors, North Suburban Conference, Central Suburban League that Vernon Hills is in, they have done a great job of putting together conference schedules that are able to highlight both boys and girls sports. So there's a lot that goes into it. And that's something I know that the conferences continue to evaluate each year as they put schedules together. So sitting in a room and putting together 31 plus different sports and trying to fit that in, they're very cognizant of what nights those games are scheduled, how many games are scheduled for both boys and girls sports. So there's a lot that goes in there, but that'll be continued to be monitored. And that's monitored by our athletic directors. It's monitored by our coaches. It's monitored by our students and our parents. People recognize if, there are different sports that have different number of contests and opportunities. But we, to touch on Stephanie, we will continue to monitor the use of the facilities for practices and games. So looking at our audit, and everyone has had a chance to, read through the audit. So I'm not going to read through it for you. I want to highlight some of the things in the audit that, and again, two of the main areas that we want to emphasize and look in our audit is our locker room accessibility, and then the addressing the private funding and booster club disparities, specifically at Libertyville High School. So first, looking at locker room accessibility, there are some immediate things that we are working on right now. So yes, there are times with locker rooms that you can't go and change a bunch of locker rooms because that's a facility, but there are some things with privacy stalls that are being taken care of right away at Vernon Hills, and also changing some locker room assignment changes at Libertyville. So those at Libertyville, when I say the work check building, that is the building that was built, I want to say it's been probably 20 years ago now, at Libertyville High School outside, and there is a locker room attached to the concession stand and also the washrooms and also storage. And so that will be reassigned this spring to girls soccer and girls lacrosse, and then also moving boys lacrosse in by the main gym. So there are some things that are immediate needs. The other piece at both schools is to look at our facility assessment, to look at the locker room space that's available to all of our athletes, and in particular female athletes, looking at the usability for showering, toilet facility storage, and accessibility. And as Stephanie pointed out, yes, Libertyville is a much older building, and there are concerns, I think, from both male boys and girls of just the age of the locker rooms. But we will look at that, and we will start that process. That process may take a while because there is funding that may be tagged into that, and depending on what that is. But we don't want to try to rush into anything also, and then realize that we're not doing the best for the long term of the school. So that's really our looking at our locker room action plan. So we'll be starting on that right away. The facilities assessment will be done by both Vernon Hills, Libertyville administration, and also buildings and grounds. So Mark Koopman and also Ozzy here at Vernon Hills, and Chris Stansel at Libertyville. So then looking at addressing the private funding and booster club disparities. And yes, there is, just for everyone's history, there is one booster club here at Vernon Hills, and there are multiple booster clubs at Libertyville High School. When Vernon Hills was open 25 years ago, when they first opened, they didn't have seniors here at the school, and they were a new school starting out. And so when that happened, the athletic director, Al Janulis, and the principal, Jim Winnington, their way of kind of, building it up was by forming one booster club. So that's the history of why there was, one booster club. Libertyville had operated with multiple booster clubs over time. I think Stephanie, or one of the parents pointed out that a couple other schools, Maine South, Homewood, Flossmoor, a couple schools too, with a long history, they had multiple clubs. Yes, there are a lot of schools that have shifted to one club, but Vernon Hills never had multiple booster clubs. They started with one booster club. So our action plan at Libertyville High School is to meet with the booster club representatives. And you're looking at 11, so a third of those teams have booster clubs. Some are more, I want to say, more active, more funding, maybe some of the others, but we're going to sit down with those representatives, and we want to do that in the month of February. The booster club should have articles of incorporation. They should have some information about their club that they should be able to share with us. Then that's really just the paperwork side of it. And then we want to also, at the same time, conduct a financial review of the booster clubs by gathering the financial summary. So we're going to gather what monies do they have, because those booster clubs don't house. There may be a few that house their money at Libertyville High School, but there's most of them house their money outside of Libertyville. So we need to get that financial piece of what money they have, where the money has come from, and where the money has been spent, to gather that information. And then our goal by the end of September is to give another update on what that could look like for our booster club funding. The other ongoing monitoring compliance is to establish a biannual Title IX review committee, conduct annual review of athletic budgets, continue to do that, continue to provide annual Title IX training for administrators, teachers, and coaches, and continue to conduct periodic student athlete surveys to assess perception of equity in athletic opportunities. And some of these surveys, I recall that girls badminton was added because of the surveys that were handed out, and those go out to all of our students. They used to go out during PE class before kind of mass email, but now that information is being emailed out to our students.
Momentary pause.
Thank you.
I don't know what questions the
Any
board
questions
might have.
from the board? Comment?
Kara Benjamin.
So as the current timeline stands, it says by end of September, the Board of Education will receive a completed review process and rationale for the recommended steps. But correct me if I'm wrong, who gave the presentation? What was her name?
Stephanie.
Sorry, Stephanie. I believe Stephanie said it was their recommendation that these are in place for the 25-26 school year. And end of September, we'd be in full swing of fall sports already. So my concern is, can we get better alignment so that we have kind of a true game plan of what's happening for 25-26?
In regards to
I'm sorry, the
booster
centralizing of booster funding. Yeah.
Brian Kelly.
So I think I mean I think our goal is to put plans in place. I don't think that we could have something new in place by September or the school year. We do have some change in, obviously we have a new superintendent coming on board, but this is a long process of trying to review these findings, that we get all the information from the booster club, and then looking at what the possibilities could be for the booster clubs at Libertyville. So we don't know what there's possibilities, and so we want to be able to look at what those possibilities are, and then to give you an update of what direction that we want to go with that by the end of September.
So realistically, any changes potentially wouldn't take effect till the following school year?
It could take
mid-year.
It could take mid-year, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Brian. I have a similar timing question maybe for Brian, you and Dan, and that is part of your recommendations if we need to invest in updating our locker rooms. Is that something you will plan for the next year's school budget in case we have to do something during the school year, or is that going to get bounced into the following school year just because of timing?
I think it all depends on what the recommendations for the locker rooms are. They could be, one of the recommendations was the privacy stalls, and that's something we're able to do right away in our budget. So I think it all depends on the scope of the project on when that could start.
Sunal Kulkarni.
Yeah, my question was, would you still preemptively put some allocation of budget in the next year's school budget, knowing that we don't have all the details by then, but you're going to get into a timing thing otherwise, where then you kind of lose a whole year if changes were needed and budget was already done. That was my only question.
I think the timeline of when schools can do, this isn't saying we're renovating the locker rooms. This is saying we're going to look at the locker rooms and kind of see what's really going on there and what's needed in those spaces. It could be small things that are needed, but it could be larger things that are needed. We don't know. And it's hard to set aside money that I don't know, because right now it could be very little to nothing, or it could be a whole lot. So there's a kind of a wide range. The second is, just to be honest, the timing in terms of when you would, so even if you had to do a bigger project, we would be pretty limited to do it probably during the school year. A lot of our more major stuff happens over the summer. We do have some things that happen during the year, but it kind of depends on the scope of what that is. So as we get through this process and get into the budgeting, we'll look at in terms of what capital stuff we need to budget for, as well as contingencies for other things that might come up, because we have a variety of things that could come up for next year beyond just what's contained in this audit, that we might need to take action on. So we'll do our best to try to anticipate what we need to do and when we're going to do it, based on really when we're going to need to do something. So it really depends on the timing and the feasibility of whatever the outcome is of this closer look at the locker room spaces. So the short answer is maybe.
Well, won't most of the facility issues being brought by June? I mean, you will have the summer to somewhat prepare, plan, and save if needed for facilities, and more of the funding issue comes in September. So, I mean, aren't we doing two kind of spokes of the wheel at different times?
I think the funding is tied to when you would actually do a project. So it kind of depends on, but yeah, based on this action plan that I'm seeing, that by the end of May, it looks like that would be the target to have this assessment completed. And by then, by the end of May is when we're nearly done with our budget process for FY26. And so we'll have a sense of what is going to be more urgent versus what's more long-term. So it'll kind of depend on what comes out of that.
Kara Drumkey.
So that kind of goes back to what Sanel's saying, that
Momentary pause.
do we not make some kind of contingency within the budget based on the facilities
Momentary pause.
plan as you are evaluating the facilities?
Yes, you very well could. It kind of depends on, we need more information first, but that could be one option that you do, is you put a contingency in there for something that might be there.
Okay.
But until we get more information, it's hard to know exactly what to do.
Don Carmichael.
Other comments?
Just procedurally, we're not accepting or rejecting a recommendation. We're not voting on this right now. We're hearing from you what you think we should do. Just letting you know that I really appreciate the report. Prior to that report coming out, I kind of felt like the house was on fire based on emails that we were getting after having read your report. I see that we're doing very well, but there are some areas that need some fixing. And there's some areas that we need to look into. I completely agree with your assessment, and I thank you for the report.
Jim Batson.
The only additional comment I'll make is, and I appreciate the report, and I think this gives us a lot of good information to move forward and make things better.
Momentary pause.
This isn't a recommendation, but a suggestion, possibly. A lot of discussion about the booster clubs at LHS, but I think it would be of some value to sort of evaluate what's happening at Vernon Hills as well in terms of the booster clubs, to understand what that process looks like, maybe to learn something from it, maybe to make some additional recommendations there as well. Even though there wasn't the concern with that, I think there's some value in understanding what that process looked like, having been part of that at one point in time. So that's just a suggestion for me. And as we get into this, I think there will be some opportunities to identify funding, plan, timing and whatnot once we get a little more information. But I guess personally, I would appreciate some updates along the way, some brief updates, whether it's just a written update to the board or a review of the plan and where we are in the plan at a meeting or at a committee meeting even. I think that would be helpful and would help keep others informed as well that we're taking this seriously and we're moving in a positive direction.
Yep, and I agree, Jim. Eventually, when you get there, you should have a compare and contrast, pros and cons of two different ways, which one works better, and kind of use that to go forward, because I think you've got ways to learn from people that are already here.
Jim Batson.
Okay, anything else? Thank you again. Thank you for coming out for your giving your presentation. We appreciate it.
Now you'll be home early.
Yeah, sort of. All right, moving on. Consent vote agenda. Items that were either previously discussed or typical items we vote on every month. Anyone wishing to pull any of these items out for separate consideration? Okay, hearing none. Let's move on and have a motion and a second.
Drumkey, move to, wait, let me pull up my thing. Move to accept the consent vote agenda as written.
Carmichael, second.
Any discussion?
Yes. One quick thing.
Okay.
Carol, I didn't send this to you, but there was a typo in one of the, oh, okay, so you already got that. The DECA ICDC Distributive Education Club had 2024 dates instead of 25 dates for their thing coming up. But there's one other thing. At one point, we had asked that any of the clubs that are asking for any kind of a trip, if they would just tell us what the name of the club is. Because if it just says DECA, I don't know what that means. So could we just make that a default in the form? Please write out the name of the club so that I know what I'm talking about here. Thank you.
Educators are known for acronyms. So.
And you'd think I would know, but
yeah, well, you can't know them all.
I didn't know this one.
Okay.
Pause for discussion and questions.
Okay. Anything else? We have a roll call, please.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Wholeheartedly, yes.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Cotwall.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye. And that was because there's an item in here of significance.
So in the consent vote agenda, there was the employment of employees, and we like to highlight in the employment of employees that the District 128 Board of Education approved the recommendation of Dr. Andrew Young as the next Vernon Hills principal. Andy, before you address the board, I know that Dr. Lechner would like to say a few words.
Yes, and as the student said earlier tonight, following an extensive interview process, it was evident that Dr. Young was the ideal candidate for this position. His dedication to the school community, staff, professional learning, and the growth and achievement of students is unwavering.
And I'll add to that. You know, we're so fortunate to have so many great administrators, great leaders in this district. Dr. Young is one of those, very well respected. He's a true cougar, for lack of a better term, and we're confident he'll continue this legacy that's been initiated, by others, but more recently by Dr. Gilliam, and just continue this the excellence that's Vernon Hills. So. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much. Well, I've got just a few remarks here, so but I promise to keep it brief. I'd like to start with just a few thank yous. First to our district administration, Board of Education, of course, and Dr. Albin for your confidence and support in me. I thank you. To Dr. Gilliam for your past 10 years of mentorship, friendship, investment in me, and most importantly, commitment and tireless investment in this community, in the school. Thank you. And finally, to my wife, Tara, who I don't have words. So again, I'll just say thank you. I can't overstate the honor and privilege it is to serve as the 4th principal at Vernon Hills. And I want you to know that I love Vernon Hills. This community is where we've chosen to raise our family, whom you can see has joined us this evening. They've been roaming the halls, but they're back. All of whom are future Cougars. This community's values, its passion, its commitment to the well-being of others and betterment of our world permeates this high school. Speaking of which, I acknowledge and understand beyond anything just how unique and special our staff and students truly are. I am honored to serve them. And as we pass the torch of excellence to the next 25 years and build a future together, I can't think of a better place for us to call home. So I'll end with this. I recognize there will be obstacles. We've heard about a few of them tonight, but I am confident in our ability to meet those challenges collectively and to come through them in a stronger position than we entered. And if you are ever wondering where my priorities as your principal lie, I would just ask you to remember those little faces over there. I can't wait to get started. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
King Young, that's what I heard.
Congratulations.
That's great. Okay. After that, how do you follow that?
Yeah.
With policy.
Yeah. Quick.
No, it's coming up.
Yeah. Moving on for action items, we have the semi-annual review of closed session minutes. This is just a semi-annual process where the board agrees to keep the majority, if not all, of the closed session minutes confidential, and that there's still need to keep that confidentiality. So if we can have
Carmichael, I move that the need for confidentiality still exists for all current closed session minutes and those listed below.
Hessel, so sorry, second. Were you done?
No, I was going to read the rest of it, but that's
Oh,
okay.
You paused, so I jumped right in. Please continue.
And that shall remain in the closed file.
Now I second.
Okay. Any questions, comments?
No.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Cotwall.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Next is some board policies for a second reading and adoption.
So, yeah, these board policies are brought in the December board meeting, and now they are coming for a second reading and then adoption after this board meeting.
Don Carmichael.
We didn't have a committee meeting, so there wasn't a lot of time to look at them very closely, and I apologize for having done that now because I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So I don't know if Ray forwarded it to you, Bryant. Policy 2-120, board member development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I don't know. Do you want to ask your question? I can.
Yeah.
answer it.
So it says that there's going to be training,
Mhm.
and that training.
Momentary pause.
That rule was passed in August, and so far we haven't had any training. And so I just wonder, like, is it on a schedule somewhere? Are we actually going to do it? Is the new board going to have this training? What does it look like?
Yeah. So when I read the board policy, there's a couple things. It says the district must make reasonable efforts to provide professional development to the board members in those areas, and those areas are highlighted in that section. And there is, I know when board members come on board, professional development, there's mandatory professional development that is provided, and Carol Scoden shares that with our board members. And then what ISB also recommends is that we share the professional development opportunities that are available through their website on this. So we need to maybe do a better job of communicating that to you, that those information and professional development is on their website, and that they have events and trainings as members that you can go in and attend.
We do receive emails
And-
regularly
From
from ISB with those opportunities. So that would be a nice to have another reminder, but
Okay.
board members are currently receiving that information directly from ISB.
Okay.
And we can do a better job of wrapping that information into your communications.
Yeah.
Don Carmichael.
If it were on some kind of a schedule, that would be nice. Okay, and then number 660, the curriculum content question or policy. It's 660, curriculum content. Item 15 says in all schools, environmental education, including instruction on the current problems and needs in conservation of natural resources, and the beginning of fall 2026, instruction on climate change. So both of our schools have environmental science and earth science, but not all students take those courses. My question is it the intent of saying, quote, in all schools, that we just provide the course and kids either take it or they don't take it? Or is the idea that maybe every kid will have they'll touch that content somehow?
Yeah, I wish Sarah was still here as the former attorney for the ISBE, because the language is not very clear on that, right? So when you look at their policies, they seldom mandate all students take a course. But what they do differentiate is in all schools, this is offered. And then often they will say in all grades, something must be offered. So typically when it's all grades, that means it's all students each of their years. But when it's in all schools, it means that we just have to offer it and make it a selection available to students. The good news is that as you identified, not only are those subjects taught in our environmental science, in our earth science program, but former science teacher extraordinaire Ray Albin also helped me understand that in all of our science classes, chemistry, physics, and biology, cycles are a theme that we are constantly visiting, and we're looking at biologic cycles, we're looking at earth cycles, we're looking at water cycles and things. So elements of climate change are already part of those courses, and something that we would continue to review, so that if not every student takes specific courses, they're at least being exposed to those concepts during elements and portions of their science education in our buildings.
Great, thank you.
I think we need a motion still on this one. We have a motion, please.
Carmichael, move to approve and adopt the updated board policies as presented.
Benjamin, second.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Cotwall.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next up is a motion to approve the LHS tennis courts repair and maintenance bid with American Seal Coating for $84,400.
Yeah, so this is part of our summer capital list. So the tennis courts for both LHS and Vernon Hills are there. LHS came in almost exactly what we were estimating. Vernon Hills, I'm just going to kind of keep those together really, but Vernon Hills was more than what we estimated because as they did more investigation, more work was needed in that area. So that's one of the things that was higher than what we originally estimated. But overall on our summer projects, we're a little bit under where we estimated. We estimated around 4.6. Right now we're probably around 4.5, but we still have a few more things to kind of get settled in on.
Okay,
Hessel, a motion to move.
Hold on, Lisa. So, just to be sure, there's two dollar amounts here. I mentioned 84,400. Do we need this to be the 9308?
Because it has the
adds
contingency.
contingencies and stuff.
No, the bid is for 84,400, and that's what we're approving.
Okay.
When you add in the design cost, which Inspect is the designer for this, the total cost of that is gonna be 90,000.
Just wanted to make sure that the motion was.
Yeah, the
the
bid
correct
is not
number.
90,000. The total cost will be 90,000 once you add in the design costs.
Okay, thank you.
Hessel, move to approve the LHS tennis courts repair and maintenance bid with American Seal Coating for $84,400.
Drumkey, second.
Okay, any questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Hessel.
Aye.
Cotwall.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next up, Vernon Hills tennis courts, similar concept.
Carmichael, move to approve the Vernon Hills High School tennis court repair and maintenance bid with the American Seal Coating for $187,000.
Kutwal, second.
Any questions or comments?
Pause for questions.
Roll call, please.
Cotwall.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Motion passes. We have, as part of the summer capital projects, HVAC and LHS HVAC equipment replacement project. We have a motion, please.
Drumkey, motion to approve the LHS HVAC equipment replacement project with Train using Omnia cooperative pricing in the amount of $1,184,562.
Carmichael, second.
Any questions or comments?
Sorry.
I was just going to say this is we had estimated originally $1 million for this, but this was where when we dropped one of the roofs, we added a little bit more on to this. We actually added a little bit too much on it, so we had to kind of scale that back. So that's where we're settling at. It was intentional to have this number be higher because if you recall when we did the roofs, we decided to delay one of the roof replacements. This is part of a multi-year replacement of the HVAC systems at LHS. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, rather than going back and looking for pictures, I know we were getting in a habit when we were making these capital improvements to include the pictures that Mark was taking, just so that we can kind of, and now they're not included. If we could try, I know I found that helpful to just understand the scope of what it is we were talking about, if we can include those back in.
Yes. So when we had the list, we had.
I also recognize
pictures.
that it's been an Arctic freeze, so I'm assuming you don't have pictures of the tennis court.
Yeah, it's cold. But we do have pictures from the condition back in the previous meeting. Yeah, so we can we'll make sure that we include those going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we had a motion in a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Cotwall.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Last but not least, Vernon Hills Pool spectator carpet replacement.
Dan Stanley.
Yeah, same thing. It's part of our list as one of the last outgoing gifts to Dr. Gilliam before he retires. That we'll get that carpet replaced there. So that's been a long
does need
time
it.
coming.
Okay, can we have a motion, please?
Carmichael moved to approve Vernon Hills High School pool spectator carpeting replacement with Libertyville tile using Sourcewell cooperative pricing in the amount of $51,618.
Hessel, second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Batson.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Cotwall.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. In the information list here, board comments and events. Anyone have any?
How was Ed Red? Didn't you have the Ed Red dinner last night?
Yeah.
It was excellent. Thank you for asking. Dr. Nelson and Jim Batson and I attended on behalf of the district. It was a great event, great networking with lots of other school boards and superintendents and law firms, as well as an outstanding presentation from the lead of the American Superintendents Association. Not, the ISA.
Right.
IASA is the Illinois branch, but she's part of the national lobbying branch. And pointed out a resource that I did not know about that I think is really interesting and helpful. They have a website and a blog and a list of resources, especially about the current changes at the federal level and how they're impacting education, as well as their position with a lot of facts for legislators as they're thinking about legislation coming down the pipeline that affects education, public education.
Yeah, and
So-
it's all in front of their paywall, so that everyone has access to that information.
Yep. Just another layer of data and advocacy that I think was great to see on behalf of public schools. So it was a great event. Hundreds of people were there at Stevenson High School that hosted the event, and it's always worth attending. So thank you for asking.
That's great. Okay. Anything else? Anyone want to share? Okay, we'll move on. No IASB report, no CEDAW report. We got some future agenda items listed. And so anyone have any comments or things to add? Okay, moving on. We're going to move into a closed session.
Hessel, I moved to convene in closed session to discuss collective bargaining, collective negotiating matters and employment of employees.
Carmichael, second.
Momentary pause.
And just to note, there will be no action taken after this meeting. So this will be the final action. So roll call, or roll call, please.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Cotwall.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
Text on the screen says, "The board is in closed session." Fade to black. End of meeting.